I would say that the reason why we wanted to make this video is because Salomé was the most important hire that I've ever made. She was the second hire that I made, but now she's the CEO of the company and manages pretty much every single person in the organization. In this video, we're gonna be talking about how my second VA that I hired over 3 years ago has turned into the CEO of my company with over 27 employees. I've been a career coach for over 10 years. 4 of them when I was part-time career coach when I was working at PepsiCo. And in 2018, I decided to do this full-time. But I didn't hire my first employee or even my first VA. It wasn't until 3 years into being a solopreneur. And I didn't realize how important it is to go on this entrepreneurship roller coaster with someone. And I don't know if it's luck, and maybe this is part of the conversation, or destiny, or just having the right leadership and systems in place to be able to build a team. And I would say that the reason why we wanted to make this video is because Salomé was the most important hire that I've ever made. She was the second hire that I made, but now she's the CEO of the company and manages pretty much every single person in the organization. And so we wanted to make this video, and I actually want to have this conversation with you, Salo, on how was that transition from being hired as a VA assistant, here's a task of things for you to do, versus now where you're telling me what to do.
First, thank you, Danny, for having me. I'm super excited to tell you guys a little bit more about what that story was like, and overall how it has impacted the business, how we see hiring, how we see our employees. So I guess that one way to describe it is eventful. It has been a really eventful journey where we've gone through our ups, downs, where we faced amazing wins together, and also where we've cried about things that went wrong. So yeah, it has been an amazing journey overall. I guess that to describe that transition, I would say that it was surprising more than anything. Because of course, I started working with you thinking of this as a part-time, temporary job while I was still in school. I was actually only thinking of working with him for 6 months. I told him the moment that we met, hey, I will only be working with you for the next 6 months, and then after that you will find someone else. And he told me look, that's fine, as long as you train the person that comes after you, it's fine, you can leave. Well, that didn't happen. It's been over 3 years, and I guess that the best way to describe it is as a roller coaster, right, that we've gone through together. But I guess that from the get-go, we were able to identify each other's strengths and try to always play to those strengths and to complement each other instead of finding a way to do everything ourselves, but really finding synergy. And that's, I would say, the main point of our relationship and how we like to see hiring as a whole, finding synergy within each other. Well, how was it for you?
And I think this is what I would want you as a career coach that might be watching this, is that the thought of when I first hired Salomé, I hired a VA. In my point perspective is I hire hourly employee in a different country to do the work that I didn't want to do, right? To do all the administrative attention to detail work that for me was very hard, because as someone who's not attention to detail, who my head is always in the clouds, who I can't even spell, I needed to hire someone that can do, I would say, the boring work. And I think it's a really big mistake that I made, and most career coaches that I speak to make when they're hiring their first VA, is that they're assuming they're hiring a robot that's just somebody that's slightly smarter than a robot, and they're just going to give them tasks that they don't want to do. But I think that the only way that I think our relationship has worked, and the only way that she's still here today, not the 6 months that she was I'm going to go be this guy's assistant for 6 months and then go live my life, is because I shift it in my head as she's now my VA, she's a full-time employee and more like an associate, and that I need to be working with her as a team, and she has strengths and weaknesses and I have strengths and weaknesses. And the good thing is that her strengths are my weaknesses and vice versa. And so I think to me that transition started happening as we both got to know each other, our strengths and weaknesses, and we were able to build around that and then hire other people around our weaknesses that we didn't have.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember this, but actually one of the first things that we did together was to take a personality test. We took a personality test to understand more, our MOs, our, modus operandi. And based on that, really understand what were going to be your responsibilities, my responsibilities, and take it from there. And I think that like if we hadn't done that, it would have been a lot harder to get to understand each other truly. So yeah, but to your point, I think that it's something that goes from both ends, right? You have always been a really good leader. I think that your strength has always been your vision, and you always knew that you couldn't build this by yourself, so you had that open mind, like you were always pretty aware that you needed to start delegating stuff to someone else. And I guess that to me and to any career coach that is currently working with an associate or with a VA, the goal would be to start identifying areas of improvement, to start playing to your strengths instead of just following instructions and completing, like the day-to-day tasks. Start asking yourself how you can replace yourself. How can you build processes and systems so someone else can eventually take on your role and you can ascend to other things, right? And I think that that's something that we figured out pretty early. I remember that on that first year of us working together, I had 5 different jobs. And I learned things that I did not learn through a bachelor's and a master's degree, right? So it's definitely a roller coaster, but you need to be walking to it with your eyes wide open and to understand what is it exactly that you're hoping to get out of it.
As I reflect back, our relationship today is very different than our relationship when we first started. But I remember now, I'm going back to those times when we started, is that every 3 months we would switch jobs. And I remember the cycle being of, I will fire myself and delegate everything to you. And then I would create a new process, idea, product, marketing funnel. And then for 3 months, and then I would delegate that to you. And then we would hire somebody else that you then delegated it to them. And so it was this process of I go and innovate, create a halfway process, not even a halfway process, hand it to Salo. Salo then formates it into a really structured systems. And then we would hire another person to then do the systems that Salo perfected after I had the idea of it. And I think that worked really well in the beginning of it. And I think looking back at it, if you're a career coach, I think it's important for you to understand yourself, so understand your strengths and weaknesses so that you can hire for that. So if you are like me, which a lot of most entrepreneurs are visionaries, more in their head is 90% on the cloud and 10% on the ground, then you need to find an integrator, which that's what Salo is for me, that 90% of her time is on the ground and 10% it's on the clouds, and that's what works really well. But we'll love your perspective, Salo, on how do you think career coaches or the business owner or the entrepreneur can do to better build a relationship with associate VA?
I think that there's a real big misconception around people that start a business and entrepreneurs as a whole, and is that they need to be good at everything, or that they need to, be the best at sales, at marketing, at finance, at coaching, of course, in the case of you career coaches. When that's not the reality, right? And that's not feasible for 90% of the population. Of course, there's going to be people that are outstanding at everything, but then that means that they will never be able to scale if they don't know how to delegate. And that's what I would say is something that everyone needs to be aware of, right? And you need to identify rather early on what is it exactly that you enjoy, what are your strengths, and then come up with a plan on how you're going to find someone else that can do that for you, if you know for a fact that's not something that you would like to enjoy doing the rest of your life. And this is of course a conversation that I have all the time, is part of this entrepreneurship journey is to enjoy it, right? If you're not enjoying it, then why would you like to leave a traditional corporate job where you have stability to go into this roller coaster if you're not enjoying it, right? And I think that that's a big part of things. Making sure that you find someone that can, complement your weaknesses and then take on that work that will then help you scale. Going back to the story that you were telling, something that I remember really clearly is how when I started working with you, that was end of February, early March, it was only 3 of us. By the end of that year, it was already 7 or 8. What other business is able to grow that fast? And I think that part of it is, of course, what you were describing of us firing ourselves every 3 months. And then building a pipeline rather early on of other people that believed on that same mission, that didn't necessarily have the experience or the skill set, but that had the right attitude, that we're looking to learn, had the right mindset, that shared our values, right? And that we're ready to take on the challenge of growing with a small business, which is something that a lot of people are not really open to doing it, but it's something that we were really lucky to find early on. And then, of course, with that came its own challenges, but I think that we've done a really good job of overcoming every single one of them as time goes.
It's very different what we were looking for in people, even when I was looking for in people when it was the first couple of hires versus what we are now. And I think there's a transition that I felt like was unique to us. And the more we are going into this world of hiring and scaling, we realize that anytime a company is going through this natural phases of growth, it's like a baby. You go through this growth. And I think in the beginning, if you are a company, especially you're in a position where you don't have unlimited resources, you don't have unlimited money, you're not able to afford to hire those people that have 10, 20, 30 years of experience and are very good at one particular thing. And I think that the difference between what I've noticed in my experience and a lot of the experience with other career coaches is that we come from the corporate world. And in the corporate world, you're one of 10,000 employees and you're very specialized in a particular role. And yeah, you might have managed a team of 100 people, but you were managing managers who manage people. And when you get to the entrepreneurship world, you're managing the day-to-day tasks, you're managing every aspect, marketing, accounting, and you just become more of a generalist. And so I think that transition that I found interesting is that in the beginning, we were finding people that were still in college that were very generalist, and we were teaching them everything. And what we were looking for was more on the core values. Did they match our core values? Did they have a work ethic? Were they coachable? Were they trainable? Were they able to execute? Versus now, we are now hiring more specialists, and we are very focusing more on like what we think about Alejo, who's doing a great job with the videos, is like we needed Alejo to have experience with videography before we hire him. Where 3 years ago, we would have been like, do you know how to use a camera? Okay, let's find a video or somebody else to teach them how to do it. And I think it's important if you are just starting out in hiring to not focus on hiring specialists so much as it is hiring generalists in the beginning. But Salo, would love your thoughts on this.
I think that a lot of entrepreneurs hold back from hiring because they think that they cannot afford it. Right, yeah. And of course that's one of like the big advantages that remote work has brought us, right? That now you have access to a wider talent pool of people that could still be able to do the work for a much lower rate that you would have to pay in your home country, right? Which is of course what happened to us. So that's a reality of it. But going on that same point, I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs feel like since they don't have the experience, they need to wait until the business can afford to hire someone that actually does have that experience. Mm-hmm. And then when they start looking, the problem is that the people that do have experience are not looking into coming back to a small business where they will have to do a lot of like the admin day-to-day work because they're just used to managing a big thing that would do like that for them, and they can focus on the strategy, on growing, right, like on different types of projects that they enjoy a little bit more. So that's where I feel like people need to be a little bit more aware of their options, right? And I think hiring people that match your values, that also follow the vision, that are looking to accomplish similar goals to what you have for you and for your business tends to be a little bit more important, especially in the beginning, than finding someone that has 10 years of experience doing sales, right? Because especially at the beginning, you're looking to train them, you're looking to develop them, you're looking to pour on them. So then they can go ahead and continue growing the business on the same way that you would do if it were yourself, which I think is something really interesting that you did rather early on, which was teaching me to think how you think, how you thought. Mm-hmm. And then when we went to hire someone else, that was like my same logic, right? And now we have a team of 27 people and we all talk the same. It's like we have a little Daniel in our head that is talking and we all use the same phrases, expressions. We are all really consistent with what we say because you always knew exactly what you wanted to pour on me, which then allowed me to pour on everyone else, right? And that is what I think has, one, allowed us to build really, really good culture, and then two, has allowed us to show and sell the vision to the team as we continue to grow, because we don't think of them as just like a team member that is going to do a part-time job while they're in college, but we actually have found for most of them leadership positions or a way for them to build their own team, for them to continue growing with the company, to have a stake at the decision making. Now they're part of our leadership team. Most of them have been with us for 2 years right out of college, right? And now they're the ones that are making decisions of where the company goes, right?
So I agree with you, Salo. One of the things that I kind of want to just, as we wrap this video up, is I get, all of our clients, one of the most commonly questions I get asked is, how do I get a Salomé, right? And I know you've kind of answered some of that here, but if you can kind of like like summarize, what do you think a career coach needs to do, or a business owner, entrepreneur needs to do to be able to attract someone like you that is, hardworking, driven, that has the same core values? And I say that because a lot of people say, okay, like, Daniel, like, what do we do to attract that? But like, it's really important from your perspective to say, what does the entrepreneur need to do, the career coach needs to do to be able to attract someone like yourself?
Yeah. That's a really good question. And I would say that first things first, you need to have clarity. You need to know what is it that you're trying to accomplish before you look at someone else and try to sell that vision to someone else. A lot of people that think like me, that operate as I do, are looking for a vision that they can go ahead and accomplish. And if the vision is not clear, then it will be really hard to make a plan to accomplish that. So that's the first thing that I would do if I were an entrepreneur myself. Have clarity over what are your goals and what is it exactly that you're trying to accomplish. Second, try to understand what are the values that you want this person to match, right? You did a really good job from the start, right? Like, that you wanted someone that was people focused, someone that had grit, someone that was able to, take really big dreams and execute them, smartly. So if you don't have core values, then the interviewing process will be a nightmare because you don't know what you're looking for. You're not looking for experience, right? So you need to have a match in those values. So those are the two main things that I would do as a career coach to be able to attract the right person. And then once you find that person, the biggest one is have patience. You're hiring someone, of course, like talking about our experience, that doesn't have the years of experience or the same background as you do, that might have a few cultural differences, whose English might not be their first language, right? So you need to have patience and be open to pouring on them, developing them, and having that as a core part of the journey. And if you do that well with them, then you're basically setting up yourself for success, because they will do the same for all of the other employees that you hire in the future.
Just to add to that, I think it's important, you as the business owner, career coach, two things. One is that it is okay if someone is better than you at some things. And in fact, that's probably a compliment to you that someone that you hired and trained became better at interviewing, hiring, managing, operations, systems, whatever that might be. In fact, that is what you want to happen. So you can't be afraid that someone becomes better than you. Two, I think you need to have big enough goals where the people that you're hiring goals can also feel their goals and their dreams beneath it. And it's important to ask them to what it is and help them achieve it. Because when they no longer feel like they can accomplish their goals by working with you, they won't be here in the long term. And so I think those are two important things to keep in mind that will facilitate you attracting and, even more importantly, retaining top talent. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Salomé and I. As you can see, this relationship wasn't built overnight. But what I want to encourage you is to definitely don't be afraid to hire and start building your team. The level of freedom that you'll be able to have is massive, and it's the transition between being self-employed and actually running a business. So definitely go do that. And if you want help in hiring your own integrator associate, we provide that service here at Opni for career coaches. There's a link below right here where you can submit an application to speak to our team to see what is it that you're looking for in your business, and see how we can help you find that person for you. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like.